Welcome to the deep dive. We're about to take a really fascinating look into this microscopic world that, well, it has a huge impact on you, the gut microbiota.
hmm
You've given us some great sources, and today we're basically trying to pull out the key stuff, give you a solid grasp of this internal community without getting totally bogged down in all the complex science stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll be digging into, what this microbial city inside you actually is, how it gets set up right from the beginning,
Right.
its massive influence on your immune system, your brain, and maybe most importantly, how you can actually shape it yourself. Through diet, lifestyle,
Okay.
get ready for some real aha moments, I think, as we uncover the secrets of this forgotten organ.
Okay, let's jump right in then. What is the gut microbiota really, and why should you, listening now, even care? I mean, bacteria in our gut doesn't sound too exciting on the surface.
Well, think of it like this. One source called your body a bacteria-filled tube.
Hmm.
Maybe not the prettiest picture.
Mm-hmm.
But the sheer number of these tiny microbes living in your digestive system, mostly the large intestine, it's just mind-boggling.
Okay.
And here's the kicker. Their combined genes, way more genetic material than your own human DNA.
Wow. Seriously, so genetically, we're kind of more microbe than human. That's a big shift in thinking.
It really is.
But for so long, science was all about the bad bacteria. Yeah, the ones making us sick. When did we start thinking about the good guys?
Yeah, you're right. Historically, it was all about fighting pathogens, the germs causing plagues, cholera.
Right, like the great stink in London, that kind of thing, blaming bad smells.
Exactly. That preoccupation with harmful microbes was strong. It's only, I'd say, relatively recently we've started to really get how beneficial the microbes inside us are.
So what flipped the switch? When did we go from just knowing they're there to figuring out they actually do stuff?
Well, it wasn't like one single moment. It was more gradual.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the early 1900s, a scientist, Arthur Kendall, he just sort of noted, hey, humans have a lot of bacteria in their intestines. Seems basic now, right?
Yeah.
But it was a start.
Mm-hmm.
Thing is, the effects of gut bacteria are often subtle, long-term.
Yeah.
So research naturally focused on the more immediate threats, the killer diseases.
Right, the urgent stuff always grabs the headlines. But fast forward to now, and microbiota is everywhere. What were the big breakthroughs?
Well, there were some forward-thinking microbiologists, mid-20th century, who started looking closer at these gut guys.
Uh-huh.
But the real game changer, that was the new technology,
Mm-hmm.
especially DNA sequencing. That let us do a proper census, like with the Human Microbiome Project.
Oh, okay.
We could suddenly see not just who was living in there,
Yeah.
but what they were doing, all the chemical stuff they produce inside us. And that's when the potential for health, disease prevention,
Mm-hmm.
it all started becoming much clearer.
It really does sound like this forgotten organ, like the source called it, is finally getting the attention it deserves. And it's not just about breaking down food anymore, is it? I remember reading about this weird link to weight.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the first hints came from these notobiotic mice studies.
Mm-hmm.
Mice raised totally germ-free.
Okay.
And the weird thing was, these mice with no gut bacteria, they ate more food but weighed less than mice with normal gut bacteria.
Huh. So the microbes were doing something with metabolism.
Exactly. It suggested they played a role.
Uh-huh.
And then came the really convincing part. Researchers took the microbiota from obese mice and put it into those lean, germ-free mice.
Ah.
And the lean mice started gaining weight, even without changing their diet. That showed pretty clearly the microbiota itself could actually contribute to weight gain.
Okay, this is where it gets super interesting for me. How do we even get this community in the first place? Where does it start?
Right at the very beginning,
Yeah.
at birth.
Mm.
And how you're born vaginally or C-section makes a big difference for your first microbes.
Really? How so?
Well, babies born vaginally get coated in their mom's vaginal microbes, which are full of good stuff like bifidobacteria.
Okay.
C-section babies, on the other hand, their first contact is often skin bacteria, maybe from the hospital environment. So they tend to get more like proteobacteria, fewer bifidobacteria.
And that difference matters long term.
It seems so. Studies have linked that initial difference to, well, a potentially higher risk of things later on, obesity, allergies, asthma, maybe even celiac disease for C-section babies.
Wow, that's significant, especially with C-sections being so common. Are they looking at ways to fix that? You mentioned vaginal swabbing.
Yeah, that's something researchers are definitely looking into. Taking a swab from the mom and giving it to the C-section baby, trying to kind of seed them with those beneficial vaginal bacteria. It's still being studied,
Mm-hmm.
but it shows how important we now realize that initial exposure is.
And after those first moments, does the baby's gut just take whatever comes along, or?
No, it's not passive at all.
Huh.
The infant gut is actually quite selective. There's probably some genetics involved, but environment, especially diet, plays a huge role.
Yeah.
Those first few months are really dynamic. You see these blooms of certain bacteria,
Yeah.
then they might crash. It's constantly changing. And what's really cool is that it's pretty unique for each baby, almost like a microbial fingerprint, except maybe for twins, they tend to be more similar.
And breast milk. I imagine that's playing a big role too, more than just food.
Oh, absolutely. Human milk is amazing. It's like a personalized guide for the baby's microbiota. It has these special sugars,
Huh.
HMOs, human milk oligosaccharides.
HMOs, right.
The baby can't digest them, but they're perfect food for specific good gut bacteria, basically tailored prebiotics.
Wow.
And get this breast milk itself actually contains living bacteria, so it's directly seeding the baby's gut too.
That's incredible. It's like a built-in starter kit. What about the mom's own microbes during pregnancy? Do they change?
They do, yeah. Research shows pretty big shifts.
Right.
By the third trimester, the mom's gut diversity often goes down a bit, and the mix of bacteria can actually start to look more like someone with obesity.
Really? Why?
The thinking is it might help her extract more calories from food, to support the baby's growth.
Makes sense.
And interestingly, you see more pro-inflammatory types, like proteobacteria, and fewer anti-inflammatory ones, like Faecalibacterium. We're still figuring out exactly why, but it shows this complex adaptation happening.
This is all so delicate, which makes me wonder, what about antibiotics early in life? That must throw a wrench in the works.
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge point. Antibiotics are lifesavers, obviously, for infections, but they can really knock back the developing gut community in infants and young kids.
Do they recover?
They often do after the antibiotics.
Oh.
But the community might not bounce back exactly the same as before. And studies have linked early antibiotic use to a higher risk of things, later asthma, eczema, even obesity. It suggests those early disruptions can cast a long shadow.
Okay, shifting gears a bit, but still connected. The immune system. It feels like the gut microbiota must be tangled up with that too.
Deeply tangled. It's a fundamental partnership, really.
Yeah.
Our gut microbes are crucial for educating and shaping our immune system right from day one.
How?
Well, the chemicals these microbes produce, they can dial inflammation up or down throughout the body, and they even talk to our brain, that brain-gut axis thing, which can affect mood, behavior.
Yeah, that brain-gut thing keeps popping up. We definitely need to get back to that. But for the immune system, what about the hygiene hypothesis? Where does the microbiota fit there?
Right, the hygiene hypothesis, the basic idea is that maybe we're too clean now.
Uh-huh.
We have less exposure to a wide range of microbes compared to, say, a few generations ago. And the theory is our immune system kind of evolved expecting that constant interaction. Without it, it might get jumpy, overreacting to harmless things like pollen or even our own body tissues.
So allergies, autoimmune stuff.
Potentially, yeah. It's like the collateral damage of trying so hard to kill all the bad germs. We end up hurting the good ones too, and maybe messing with how our immune system learns to behave properly.
It's like the immune system needs training reps with different microbes. I also read about old friends. What's that about?
Yeah, Old Friends builds on that. It's about specific microbes, bacteria, even things like parasitic worms, helminths that we humans co-evolved with for thousands and thousands of years.
Worms.
Sounds weird, I know. But the idea is our immune systems sort of grew up expecting these guys to be around, relying on them for regulation. Now, with modern sanitation and lifestyle, we've lost a lot of them, especially in developed countries.
And losing them might be bad.
It might be contributing to immune systems that aren't as well regulated, possibly making us more prone to allergies and autoimmunity. It's not just about having microbes, but maybe having the right kinds of interactions we evolved with.
So it's complex. What about the immune system right there in the gut lining, the mucosal system? How does that deal with all these bacteria?
That's the front line. The mucosal immune system is constantly checking things out in the gut. It's like security. It has to know the difference between the friendly residents, our microbiota, and dangerous invaders.
A tough balancing act.
Totally. It needs to tolerate the good guys, even learn from them, but be ready to attack pathogens immediately.
Are there specific bacteria that are really important for that balance, keeping things calm?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
For instance, some types of Firmicutes bacteria seem to help recruit these special immune cells called T regulatory cells, or Tregs.
Tregs, what do they do?
They're like the peacekeepers.
Right.
They help calm down inflammation. So having bacteria that encourage Tregs can protect against things like colitis, autoimmune issues, allergies.
Okay.
But interestingly, it might be less about the exact name of the bacteria and more about what they do, like producing those short-chain fatty acids, SCFAs. from fiber. That function seems really key.
Right, SCFAs again, this is all tying together. Even something like H. pylori, the stomach ulcer bug, seems more complicated now.
Oh yeah, H. pylori is a fascinating case. It definitely can cause ulcers and stomach cancer for some people,
Right.
but there's evidence suggesting kids who don't have it might actually have a higher risk of asthma and allergies.
Seriously?
Yeah, the thinking is because we've coexisted with it for so long, it might play some role in tuning our immune system early on. Wiping it out completely, like we've mostly done in the West, might have these unintended side effects.
Huh. So what's the idea? Bring it back.
Some researchers are even tossing around ideas like maybe strategically introduce it in childhood for the immune benefits and then get rid of it later in life before it can cause problems.
Yeah.
It just shows that immune system Goldilocks thing, right? Not too hot, not too cold.
Exactly. Okay, let's switch to something we can actually control day to day. Food. Diet. It seems obvious that what we eat must feed these trillions of microbes.
Oh, it's absolutely direct. What you eat changes your gut microbiota's composition, what it does, and fast. We're even moving beyond just saying dietary fiber now. The term you'll hear more is microbiota accessible carbohydrates, MACs.
MXCs. Okay, tell me about MSCs. What are they?
So MSCs are basically the carbs in plant foods, fruits, veggies, legumes, whole grains that we can't digest. Our enzymes don't break them down.
Right, they pass through.
Exactly. They get down to the large intestine pretty much intact, and that's where the bacteria chow down. They ferment these MSCs.
And that fermentation produces.
All sorts of good stuff, but especially those short-chain fatty acids, SCFAs we keep mentioning.
SCFAs. We know they're good for immunity. What else do they do?
They're real multitaskers. They're fuel for our colon cells. They help lower inflammation right there in the gut. They encourage those Treg cells. They're a super important link between the food you eat and the health of your gut and really your whole body.
It's funny, we've heard about fiber for ages. Was that just an early version of understanding MSCs?
Pretty much, yeah. You had pioneers like Dr. Cleve back in the mid-20th century saying, hey, too much refined stuff, not enough fiber, that's linked to modern diseases, so fiber got on food labels. But then came the whole low-fat craze, and maybe the focus shifted a bit away from fiber as food for microbes. The nuance got a little lost.
So it's not just any carb. We need the complex ones, the indigestible ones, not simple sugars.
Precisely. Simple sugars, easily digested starches, they hit your bloodstream fast, spike blood sugar, insulin, potentially leading to insulin resistance down the line. The real magic for your microbes happens with the MOCs they can ferment.
And if we don't eat enough MMEs, what do the bacteria eat then?
Well, that's the worrying part. Some might actually start munching on the mucus layer that lines and protects your intestines.
That doesn't sound good.
No, it's not ideal. It could potentially damage that barrier and contribute to inflammation. Yeah. So you want to keep them happy with plenty of MMEs.
Okay, practicalities. Where do we find these MS? What foods?
They're in loads of plant foods. Think onions, garlic, leeks, asparagus, artichokes, bananas, especially slightly green ones, apples, oats, barley, beans, lentils, chickpeas.
Lots of options.
Yeah. And different maquis feed different microbes, which is why variety is key for building a diverse, resilient gut community.
And that diversity, that richness, is that really the goal? I've heard about rich versus poor microbiomes.
Absolutely crucial. Yeah, study after study shows people with more diverse gut genes, a richer microbiome, tend to have more anti-inflammatory bacteria. They're more likely to be lean. They have better metabolic health, less insulin resistance, make more SCFAs.
And a poor one?
Linked to the opposite, more inflammation, obesity, higher risk for metabolic problems. It's quite consistent. And remember those mouse studies. Transferring a lean microbiome could actually help obese mice lose weight. That's pretty direct evidence.
It sounds like modern food processing might be stripping these MCs out without us realizing, like with wheat.
That's a perfect example. A whole wheat kernel has the starchy endosperm, but also the bran and the germ, which are packed with fiber MCs. Old school milling kept it all. Modern milling often takes out the bran and germ to get that fine white flour. Makes it last longer, different texture, sure.
Yeah.
But you lose a ton of the MXCs. You're basically starving your microbes.
But there are better options, like sourdough. Does that help?
Yes. Sourdough, especially whole grain sourdough, can be better. The long fermentation process actually breaks down some components, potentially makes the remaining M eggs more accessible, and can lower the glycemic load, how fast it raises your blood sugar. Plus, if it's whole grain, you still get the bran and germ fiber.
Okay, good to know. Now, we've talked gut, we've talked microbes, immune system, diet, But one source title really jumped out, a gut feeling. That brain-gut connection seems huge.
It really is. We have this incredible network of nerves in our gut, the enteric nervous system. People call it the second brain.
Second brain, why?
Because it's so complex. Millions of neurons, more than in your spinal cord. It manages digestion, sure, but it can operate somewhat on its own, and it's constantly talking back and forth with your actual brain. Through nerves, through the stress system, the HPA axis. It's a two-way street. And guess who's right in the middle of that conversation?
The microbes.
The microbes, exactly.
So how do they talk to the brain? What's the message?
Well, remember those germ-free mice again? They often behave differently. Maybe more bold, more exploratory. We can't do that ethically in people, obviously, but it was a big clue. The leading idea is that the chemicals produced by gut bacteria, metabolites, neurotransmitters, all sorts of stuff, can get absorbed, travel through the bloodstream, cross the blood-brain barrier, and directly influence brain function and mood.
Wow. So our gut bugs could actually be nudging our mood or decisions. What about the anxiety studies in mice? That sounded wild.
Yeah, those were pretty striking. They did fecal transplants again, took microbes from naturally anxious mice and put them into germ-free mice. The recipient mice started acting anxious, and vice versa. Microbes from calm mice made germ-free mice calmer. They even saw changes in brain chemicals, like BDNF, which is linked to depression and anxiety. It strongly suggests that gut microbes can actually cause changes in anxiety levels.
That's incredible. And it's not just mood either. You mentioned TMAO before, linking the gut to heart health.
That's right. TMAO, trimethylamine N-oxide. It's linked to higher risk of heart disease.
And microbes make it.
Well, certain gut microbes take stuff found in red meat, eggs, things like carnitine and lecithin. They break it down into TMA, and then the liver turns that into TMAO.
Okay.
But here's the interesting part. Your diet really shapes this. People who eat meat regularly produce way more TMAO after a steak than vegetarians or vegans do. Their microbes are primed for it. Vegetarians' microbes, not so much. Shows how adaptable the microbiota is.
Fascinating. And then there was the link, maybe still preliminary, but with autism spectrum disorder. How does that fit?
Yeah, that's a really active area of research, mostly in animal models still. But they've found that mice modeling ASD symptoms often have a leaky gut, altered gut permeability.
Meaning stuff gets through that shouldn't.
Exactly. Microbial products can leak into the bloodstream. They found one specific molecule, EPS, was higher in these mice. And when they gave EPS to healthy mice, those mice started showing ASD-like behaviors.
Wow.
Again, it's early days, animal models. It points to this idea of the gut as this unsupervised drug factory churning out chemicals that can impact the brain, especially if the gut barrier isn't intact. And this potential link isn't just for ASD. Researchers are looking at connections to schizophrenia, OCD, depression too.
Okay, let's talk about one of the most direct ways to change the microbiota. Fecal microbiota transplantation, FMT. The chapter Eat, Chitin, Tea, and Live is memorable.
Yes, it's certainly direct. But FMT, transferring fecal matter from a healthy donor, is all about restoring a healthy, diverse microbial community when it's been seriously damaged. And believe it or not, using poop for medicine actually has roots going way, way back.
Really? Okay. But now, what's it used for medically? It seems really good for one specific thing.
Yeah, it's had amazing success, like really high cure rates for recurrent C. difficile infections, C. diff.
That's the one that often happens after antibiotics, right? Causes terrible diarrhea.
Exactly. Antibiotics wipe out lots of the good bacteria, which normally keeps C. diff in check. That ability of a healthy microbiota to fend off invaders, we call that colonization resistance.
So the good guys defend the turf.
Pretty much. They compete for space, for food. Some even make chemicals that kill off bad bugs. Plus, they help prime the immune system. Antibiotics disrupt all that, leaving an opening for C. diff.
You can see how taking antibiotics could knock down your defenses.
Definitely. Studies using broad-spectrum antibiotics show a massive, rapid drop in the number and variety of gut microbes. And even though things often bounce back somewhat after you stop the pills, it might not be the same community. You might be left more vulnerable.
It really shows the downside, the collateral damage of antibiotics sometimes. What about regulating FMT? It sounds kind of tricky.
Oh, it is. It's a medical procedure. And regulators like the FDA in the U.S. have been figuring out how to handle it. Is it a drug? Is it a tissue transplant?
Right.
Because it's so life-saving for recurrent C. diff, there are pathways to use it, but with really strict rules about screening donors. Safety. Stool banks have popped up, which helps standardize things, providing tested material, but it's still an evolving area.
And what about using it for other stuff like IBD, Crohn's, colitis, or even obesity? Is it working there too?
That's where it gets more complicated. C. diff is often about restoring that colonization resistance after antibiotics.
Mhm.
Things like IBD or obesity are likely much more complex, involving different kinds of microbial disruption, immune factors, genetics.
So not a magic bullet for everything.
Probably not on its own. Research is ongoing, but success rates haven't been as consistently high as for C. diff. People are looking at combining FMT with other things, maybe using antibiotics first to weed the gut, then FMT to seed, and then specific diets with MS to feed the new microbes and help them stick around.
Weeding, seeding, feeding. Makes sense. I also read about people banking their own stool, like preemptively.
Yeah, that's an idea gaining some traction. If you know you're going to have a treatment, like heavy antibiotics or chemo, that might wreck your microbiota, maybe banking your own healthy stool beforehand gives you a way to restore it afterwards, kind of like a personal microbial insurance policy.
Interesting idea. Now, thinking about the long term, aging. Our bodies change. Does the microbiota change too as we get older?
It definitely does, yes. As people age, you often see a decrease in the overall diversity of the gut microbiota.
Less variety.
Less variety, yeah. And there tends to be an increase in low-level chronic inflammation throughout the body, sometimes called inflammaging.
Inflammaging, and that's linked to age-related diseases.
It's thought to be a contributing factor, yeah.
Yep.
The changes in the gut microbiota are potentially part of that picture, contributing to that inflammatory state.
So what can older adults do? Can we fight inflammaging through the gut?
Well, the same strategies apply, but they might be even more crucial. Focusing on a diet packed with diverse MACs from plants.
Fiber, fiber, fiber.
Right. And maybe being more moderate with saturated fats from animal sources. The goal is to encourage those beneficial bacteria that produce the anti-inflammatory SCFAs. Keeping that gut ecosystem vibrant and diverse seems key to potentially dampening down some of that age-related inflammation.
Okay, let's bring it all home. Managing our internal fermentation, as one source put it. What are the big takeaways? How do we cultivate a thriving gut microbiota day to day?
The main goal, really, is to nurture a diverse community of microbes that makes plenty of those beneficial SCFAs. We see lower diversity in many Western populations compared to, say, traditional hunter-gatherers like the Hadza.
Right.
And even within Western countries, leaner people generally have more diversity than those with obesity. So how do you get that diversity? Consistent fuel. A wide array of MACs from different plant foods.
Keep feeding them the good stuff.
Exactly. That keeps them happy, stops them eating your gut lining, and promotes a stable, strong community.
So prioritize plants, variety. What about things to maybe limit?
Well, we talked about high red meat intake,
Right.
the L-carnitine getting turned into TMAO risk factor, and high intake of saturated animal fats seems to be linked to lower diversity and more inflammation. So moderation there seems wise for gut health.
Okay. What about probiotics, yogurts, supplements? Do they make a lasting difference?
It's complicated. Probiotics are live microbes, and they can have benefits, often related to immune function or maybe specific digestive issues for some people.
Except they don't stick around.
Mostly, no. They seem to be more like transient visitors passing through, exerting effects while they're there, rather than permanently setting up shop and changing your core microbiota long term.
So not a replacement for diet.
Definitely not. And the research is still figuring out which specific strains do what and for whom. It's not one size fits all. One source suggested becoming your own microbiota experimentalist, trying different fermented foods, seeing how you feel. That might be the best approach for now.
It really sounds like this way of eating lots of plants, fiber, maybe fermented foods, less red meat, and saturated fat lines up pretty well with diets we already know are healthy, like Mediterranean or traditional Japanese.
Absolutely. There's huge overlap. Those diets are famous for promoting health and longevity, right? And it's highly likely that a big part of why they work is because they nurture a healthy, diverse gut microbiota. That's probably a key mechanism behind their benefits.
This has been incredibly insightful, a real deep dive into this hidden world inside us. So, summing up, these gut microbes are massively influential: immunity, metabolism, brain, behavior,
Yeah,
the works.
totally. And the empowering thing is we're not just passengers. We have real influence through our daily choices, especially diet. Loading up on those MACs, being mindful of saturated fats, red meat, maybe exploring fermented foods. These are real tools we can use.
It's just amazing how fast this science is moving, too. The potential for future treatments, prevention strategies focused on the gut, it's huge. It really changes how you think about health.
It really does. So maybe for you listening, the final thought is, what's one small thing you could do starting today to give your gut microbes a little boost? Could you look at the fiber on your next meal's label? Could you add some yogurt, some kimchi, some beans? Even a small step done consistently could make a real difference to your internal ecosystem.